Flying is one of the most consistently good types in competitive Pokemon, particularly before Generation 4. This was an elite type, a blessing for any Pokemon that had it. Flying has the incredibly valuable immunity to ground, some solid resistances, and even more importantly, a complete immunity to the entry hazard spikes, toxic spikes, and sticky web. In Generation 3, when spikes became stackable, and before Stealth Rock existed, I would call Flying the best type in the entire game, with the most valuable immunities you can get. From Gen 4 onwards, Stealth Rock was introduced and became the new defining hazard of competitive singles. Since Stealth Rock deals damage based on your weakness to Rock type, Flying types were now threatened by an entry hazard for the first time, and quite significantly. Flying types take 25% of their HP in damage every time they switch in against Stealth Rock. Despite this significant new drawback, Flying remained a prominent force in competitive anyway, gliding by on all its other incredible advantages. In Generation 8, Flying types were restored to their former glory, thanks to the new item Heavy Duty Boots, which grants a complete immunity to hazard damage, patching up their weakness to Stealth Rock. Let's take a look at the great heights and occasional descent of the Flying type throughout competitive singles history. But first, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to alert Makago of some potential Typhlosion subterfuge. Thank you. In Generation 1, the only OU ranked Flying type is Zapdos, the legendary bird, and it's one of the best Pokemon in the entire format. What's interesting about Electric Flying typing is that it is a strict upgrade over Mono Flying typing. Electric only has one weakness to ground, and Flying cancels out that weakness, so being Electric Flying is strictly better than just being Flying. I will say though that the Flying typing is doing much of the heavy lifting here for Zapdos and what makes it so great. Ground immunity is absolutely excellent. In Gen 1, there's very limited attacking options for most types. Types like Bug and Fighting just don't have good attacks. But one of the best and most prominent attacks in the game is Earthquake, for its high 100 base power and the great coverage it offers, so immunity to Earthquake is excellent. It gives Zapdos key entry points. Zapdos also has access to Drill Peck to take advantage of its Flying typing for a stab option, which is useful here. This applies pressure to Blissey. Crucially, Blissey cannot counter against Drill Peck. In Gen 1, counter only works against normal and fighting type attacks. It's a bit weird. But Drill Peck is nice because it can bypass counter, actually quite useful. And Flying also hits grass types super effectively, which comes up against Exeggutor, who's a very prominent and common Pokemon. Zapdos is one of the best win conditions to build around in Gen 1, with the agility set easily outrunning everything and posing a significant threat to most things in the game. Zapdos does suffer from a poor matchup against Rhydon. Rhydon completely destroys Zapdos. It's immune to electric, and it also resists Flying. So you can't really touch Rhydon, regrettably, but if you can take out Rhydon, lure it down, wear it down, then Zapdos kind of goes insane. That's a common game plan in Gen 1. Get rid of the Rhydon to make way for your Zapdos. Articuno is another viable Flying type in Generation 1 OU. It's on the fringe, it's not too common, but it is seen occasionally, and I personally really love using Articuno in Generation 1. I think it's a lot of fun. In most generations, Ice Flying is a terrible typing, but that's not true in Gen 1. In fact, this is a great typing here. Ice typing offers Freeze immunity, which is very valuable in Gen 1, where Ice Beam and Blizzard spam are everywhere, and Ice cancels out your weakness to enemy Ice attacks, which is also crucial for the same reason. And Flying offers that ever-valuable ground immunity, giving you more opportunities to hit the field, and unlike Zapdos, you do pose a threat to Rhydon. You hit them with a super effective Blizzard, which has a massive power of 120, 90 accuracy, and hits really hard with a massive special stat of 125 as well. So Articuno sets itself apart from Zapdos in that it does threaten Rhydon, and this Stab Blizzard is one of the strongest. This is actually the strongest special attack in the game, I believe, in Gen 1. So that's something. Articuno does suffer in other areas. I mean, it can struggle against water types like Starmie. You know, they resist ice, and you don't hit them that hard. You don't have Drill Peck on Articuno, regrettably. You have to use Double Edge as your physical attack of choice for mixed damage, and that's not as hard hitting as the Stab Drill Peck. It also can be defeated by counter and stuff like this. You do get Hyper Beam though, which is useful to finish off enemies, one of the best moves in Gen 1. And Agility, of course, to enhance your speed. Agility also has the benefit of cancelling out the paralysis speed lowering effect. That's a Gen 1 quirk, so that's nice. I think Articuno is quite good, but yeah, it does have its shortcomings and can struggle sometimes to break through things like Chansey and Snorlax as well. Dragonite is another viable flying type in Generation 1, and one of the best uses of Wrap, an infamous move in Generation 1. This move has a base power of only 15, but it has the incredible effect of preventing the target from moving. So it basically has a 100% flinch chance, you could think of it like that. Wrap can hit them with death by 1,000 cuts, wearing them down into range of Hyper Beam, and that's the strategy for Dragonite. Chip them down and defeat them like that. Wrap also has the benefit of making switch-ins safe, because you wrap and they can't move for multiple turns actually. In that sense, it's not exactly like a flinch, because they're stuck there for multiple turns. So if they choose to stay, they will also be inactive. They have to switch. This is kind of like a Gen 1's version of U-turn a little bit. It's not quite the same, but because they can't do anything, you can safely bring in something that would otherwise struggle to get on the field, and that can be an interesting way to pivot or just create a safe entry point for something. So that's another use that Wrap and effects like this have, like Clamp, etc. Dragonite also can get agility and sometimes does use it. Hyper Beam is great with such a good attack stat of base 134 on Dragonite, and Blizzard is good coverage too. Dragonite has some benefits over the other Wrap user, Victory Bell. Its flying typing being good defensively, access to Hyper Beam, access to more coverage, and Thunder Wave is useful too. What sucks about Dragonite though is actually Ice weakness is pretty devastating in Gen 1, where Ice coverage is more common than ever, I think, even though Ice coverage is common in every generation. In Gen 1, it's especially common, so that's rough. But not everything carries Ice coverage, so there are ways to hit the field. Wrap is useful. Dragonite can do stuff. Moltres is another viable flying type in Generation 1 OU, and what's unfortunate about Moltres is that Fire type does not actually resist Ice yet. That's something they added later, so you're completely vulnerable to Ice type attacks, which, as we've established, are damn common here. So that's rough for Moltres. And the usual advantages of Fire type aren't really that useful. Fire coverage from enemies is not that common, so fire resistance barely comes up. And in fact, water weakness is another point against you, because Starmie is common and will carry Surf a lot of the time. But what's nice about Moltres is Fire Blast in Gen 1 is really good. It has a 30% burn chance, kind of like Skull. So in Gen 1, this is the most reliable way to apply burn, and burn can be pretty high impact. What's good about Moltres is that it can actually burn incoming Snorlax trying to wall you, which obviously devastates them. They're a physical attacker, they need that damage output, and burn completely destroys them in that respect. Even burning an incoming Chansey can be pretty good. This is just a high secondary effect chance on a really hard-hitting special attack. I mean, it has 120 power and 125 special. So yeah, Moltres can do a bit of wall breaking and also apply burn at the same time. What's rough about this though is that Fire Blast only has 8 PP, so you can't quite spam it forever. Something like a resting enemy will just soak it and consume one of your limited PP, which is rough. There's also the accuracy issue, and all of Moltres' defensive disadvantages give it various struggles, but it's still a decent concept that has its merits, and you have a good move pool beyond this. You've also got Fire Spin, which is kind of like Wrap, but less accurate with only 70 accuracy. Same effect though of preventing movement, so that can be an alternative thing to click to chip things down if you like, and that's pretty useful. The other birds don't get such an option, but the accuracy is damn rough on this. 70 is quite terrible, but yeah, Moltres not too bad actually in Gen 1. Dodrio is my favorite Pokemon, a childhood favorite, and they always say that 3 heads are better than 1. It's a common turn of phrase. Regrettably, Dodrio is not the best in Gen 1 OU, but it does have some viable traits. It could be usable if you put your mind to it. I mean, normal types are elite here, and normal flying is a great physical stab combination actually, because these are the 2 types with actual good physical attacks. Drill Peck provides you with some coverage against Exeggutor, some anti-counter technology, and it's just a good attack. You could stab Hyper Beam, stab Body Slam, which are the elite options of Gen 1. I mean, this sounds really good. The problem, though, is that you just get toasted by Rhydon. He, of course, resists everything that you do and hits you back with super effective rock moves and stuff like that. But if you can take out Rhydon, Dodrio kind of goes crazy, maybe similar to the Zapdos game plan. I mean, Zapdos is bulkier. It provides a bit more to teams with utility like Thunder Wave, but hey, Dodrio has big pecs. It's got big slams, so I think that this is valid as well in some people's eyes. Dodrio has a great speed stat of base 100, can outrun Jinx in the lead slot and sometimes KO it with Hyper Beam, I think, with crit chance factored in. It's not terrible odds to do so, I believe, so that's fun. And yeah, Dodrio, I mean, it's a Pokemon with heart at the end of the day, and that's what counts the most. And then there's Charizard, who I think it'll probably be a stretch to call this viable in Gen 1 OU, but it does set itself apart from Moltres a little bit. With its superior physical move pool, it has access to Swords Dance, which can boost its attack and make the Hyper Beam and Earthquake harder hitting. And Earthquake is great coverage, of course. And then there's Fire Blast to do big damage and spread burn. Charizard is also faster than Moltres with base 100 speed. The special stat is so much worse though, significantly worse. Moltres has 125, I think, and you only have 85 on Charizard, and you suffer from all the same shortcomings. So I don't know if Charizard is that worth using over Moltres, but it does have some stuff, maybe if you put your mind to it. Generation 2 introduced 2 new flying type legendaries to the game, Ho-Oh and Lugia, and these are pretty iconic legendaries. Ho-Oh tends to be the better one across the board. In Generation 2, it's a bit plain. It does have the great signature move Sacred Fire with a 50% burn chance. It's an excellent move, and just excellent stats, of course, as expected from a legendary. Later on in the games, though, it would receive the ability Regenerator, which would go on to define it moving forward, and it tends to be one of the more consistent legendaries in the whole series. Lugia, on the other hand, has kind of struggled. Psychic Flying is an awkward typing. In its debut game, it's excellent, of course, with just off the back of excellent stats and a good curse set here, with Curse Aeroblast being quite potent. Aeroblast is a really good attack, a simple 100 power move with high crit rate. Sacred Fire is a better attack, I will say, but Aeroblast also good. In later games, Lugia would get Multiscale, which would then define its identity. Multiscale being one of the best defensive abilities in the entire game, causing you to take half damage from incoming attacks if you're at full HP. Same ability that Dragonite has. And Lugia can abuse this on stall teams in Ubers, in many cases. Psychic Flying is just a rough defensive typing though. Weaknesses to Ghost and Dark and Rock would make Lugia's life a bit difficult in that defensive role in the future. Generation 2 introduced one of the best flying types in history to the game, Skarmory, with the legendary Steel Flying type, which to this day is one of the best type combinations available. I mean, Steel Flying are so complementary, it's crazy. Steel cancels out your Rock weakness, turning it into a neutrality. Flying cancels out your ground weakness and your fighting weakness. In Gen 2 and 3, Skarmory has no physical weaknesses to speak of, pre-physical special split. I mean, that's just outstanding, making it a naturally excellent special wall. Spikes were introduced in Generation 2, and Skarmory is immune to spikes, which is ever valuable. Ground immunity feels more pronounced here, with enemies like Golem, Snorlax with its ground coverage, and even Steelix and Marowak appearing in the metagame. There's more ground types to worry about, and ground immunity has never felt so great. Skarmory is perhaps the most reliable Snorlax check in the game, and checking Snorlax is the big thing you want to do here, of course. You can just whirlwind them out, you totally destroy physical curse-like sets, and sometimes they even run mixed coverage like Fire Blast or Thunder specifically for Skarmory. That's how much of a problem Skarmory is for Snorlax. And you can of course curse up yourself here in Gen 2. Drill Peck exists for some flying type damage, and this is just one of the best and most reliable Pokemon in Gen 2, and it would only get better as the years went on. And of course Zapdos feels significantly buffed in Generation 2. Significantly is an understatement. It's gargantuanly buffed as the number 2 Pokemon in the game right behind Snorlax. Hidden Power was such a benefit for Zapdos, providing it with the coverage needed to hit ground types. Used to give it so much trouble. Now Zapdos can defeat Rhydon, it can defeat Golem and Nidoking and all these pesky ground types that are immune to electric type moves. As I said with the Skarmory section, Flying type is feeling so much better here, offering Spike immunity, offering ground immunity against more ground types to worry about. All of Zapdos' great advantages in Gen 1 are still there, but it's just even better here. It's bigger and better. And there are some other flying types to speak of in Gen 2, none that are particularly competitively viable though. Articuno is usable I suppose, but it really suffers from its electric weakness here in the electric type tier. Charizard can do Belly Drum, but I don't know if I value that very much. I don't think it's very good here. And I don't know how good Moltres is in a world where Fire Blast no longer has that burn chance. You don't have Will-O-Wisp yet. You can sometimes use Sunny Day Moltres to wall break with Charcoal. That's a set I've seen, and that can actually break through Snorlax, which is interesting, but not very commonly seen. And Generation 3 introduced another flying type legendary, Rayquaza, who is one of the coolest legendaries ever done. I love Rayquaza. It's a dragon flying type. It has the ability Airlock, which cancels out the effects of weather, making it a foil to the other 2 legendaries of Gen 3, Kyogre and Groudon, who both create weather. Rayquaza can ignore such effects. It's an offensively oriented Pokemon with 150 in its attack and special attack, respectable speed of base 95, and access to the ever valuable move Extreme Speed, a high power priority priority attack, which is great here in Gen 3 Ubers, where it can one-hit KO the Deoxys forms, it can finish off low health enemies. And Rayquaza has an excellent move pool with special attacking options, physical attacking options, everything you could ever ask for, really. And a Choice Band set is common. Dragon Dance can be good. You can really customize Rayquaza and take advantage of its wide options, which makes it quite an interesting Pokemon in Ubers that great players can build around very creatively. In Gen 3, I think Flying type is the best type in the entire game. This is the peak of its power, I would say. Spikes are the most central mechanic in Gen 3, the main form of progress, and Flying types are just completely immune. Another factor in the favor of Flying types, Dugtrio exists here. It's a rare format where Dugtrio Arena Trap is allowed. You're not only immune to Earthquake, you're immune to the trapping effect. You can just switch out of Dugtrio, which is so valuable. And ground immunity in general just comes in handy. Fighting resistance, also great, and being able to threaten fighting types, because fighting types are better here, and they're common wall breakers. And the two most common fighting types in the game, Breloom and Heracross, are both ×4 weak to flying, so it makes flying typing even more effective against them. Flying typing just has the most valuable traits I think you can have, and for that reason there are multiple OU ranked flying types in this generation. The most significant new one would definitely have to be Salamence, a top tier offensive Pokemon in Generation 3, and much of that is because of its flying typing, offering all those great advantages, of course. Salamence is an excellent Dragon Dance sweeper. It uses hidden power flying because it doesn't get any other good flying type attacks, but this is really hard hitting on Salamence with Dragon Dance boosts and a monstrous 135 base attack. Salamence is so great offensively and defensively. With Intimidate lowering the enemy's attack on switch in, you have such ease of entry. You have no trouble finding opportunities to boost up and sweep. Dragon Dance Salamence requires a bit of setup though. It doesn't instantly win when it hits the field and finds a boost. You gotta get rid of Swampert and Skarmory and other physical walls like a Melodic or Suicune, maybe a defensive Starmie. Things like this that can check Salamence. There's plenty in the game that can check this in a pinch. It doesn't win instantly in a single turn, but it is definitely a great win condition to build around and one of the most effective in the game, especially because after a Dragon Dance it outruns everything including Aerodactyl and Jolteon, which not many other Dragon Dances can say about themselves. So that's great for Salamence. Salamence also has serious set variety. Mixed Salamence is probably the most popular Salamence set actually, just because it is so widely threatening and it doesn't require the same support as Dragon Dance Salamence does. It just immediately poses a threat as soon as it hits the field, which is very useful. Stab Dragon Claw comes in handy, and Fire Grass Fighting is ideal coverage for Gen 3. You hit Skarmory with Fire Blast, Blissey and Tyranitar with Brick Break, and Swampert with Grass in Power Grass. So excellent, and you of course have great offensive stats in both areas, both attack and special attack, so that comes in handy. Salamence can also run a defensive set. You can go Wish, Protect, Flamethrower, Toxic as a common set, and you just go full defense investment like this. And this is one of the most reliable ways in the game to handle fighting types. Even Rock Slide, super effective Rock Slide, will be shrugged off. And this is damn valuable because it's immune to spikes thanks to the flying typing. It can support teams with Wish, healing up teammates. This is a really great set that I think can be a bit underappreciated sometimes. Excellent Pokemon all around, and, I've sung the praises of Salamence in many occasions. I think it's a beautiful Pokemon design, with that ice weakness being a key point of exploitation that you can take advantage of. It's not too overwhelming that you can't check it in like a turn with some sort of defensive switch in, but it also promotes a gaming. You're either forming a game plan for the Dragon Dance set or making good predictions and getting it on the field in smart ways with the mixed set and taking advantage of your wide coverage. Mixed Salamence also can't one-hit anything, but it poses a big threat to everything, so that feels balanced as well in my opinion. Aerodactyl existed in past generations, but it feels absolutely excellent in Gen 3 more so than any other generation, where it is basically a Choice Scarfer. It kind of feels like a Choice Scarfer before that concept even existed, because it outruns just about everything. It has this massive speed set of base 130, and Aerodactyl can even outrun Tyranitar after a Dragon Dance and enemies like Starmie and even Dugtrio, who is famously fast. Other occasional fast threats like Sceptile and Alakazam, Aerodactyl outruns just about all of them. The only thing that it doesn't outrun is like Electrode, but who uses Electrode? You tie with Jolteon, so that's something, but Aerodactyl for the most part is like the premier speed tier of the format. And it has so many great traits. I mean, having flying typing basically feels like having heavy duty boots or Magic Guard in this generation, because spikes are the only hazard. Spike immunity is what makes Aerodactyl so scary, because it can't be worn down like other threats can. Even Jolteon, who has the same speed tier and is just as threatening in many cases with its great electric grass or electric ice coverage, it gets worn down by the spikes. Aerodactyl doesn't. It's like a boots threat in Gen 8 or 9 or something like that, because it just can't be worn down. It's also immune to Sandstorm because of that rock typing, and with a choice band and a decent attack stat of 105, this thing is really scary. Bringing Aerodactyl in and forcing enemy switches is a great way to take advantage of spikes, and Aerodactyl is a common Pokemon on spikes teams for this reason. Because even if they come in and resist Rock Slide, they're stepping on spikes and getting worn down. Every time Aerodactyl comes in, it's ignoring spikes and it's forcing enemies to take spikes damage, and that's the crux of it that makes it so good. It's also good wide coverage, so you can make gamer plays like Earthquake and incoming Steel types or Rock types trying to resist your Rock Slide or Double Edge. Hidden Power Flying is a common choice because it's stab boosted. It hits enemies like Celebi, grass types like Venusaur that occasionally get seen, and flying types of course, such as Heracross and Breloom. But something you also see is Hidden Power Bug as coverage. This is useful because it one-hits Celebi, which can be an alternative plan against like Carmine boosting Celebi. If you see a Celebi on a special offense team, you just go straight to Aerodactyl, they Carmine, and now you basically stop them from baton passing to teammates because you're forcing a KO with Hidden Power Bug. Hidden Power Bug is also cool because it's a great mid-ground against a lot of things. It hits Tyranitar super effectively, also hits Claydol and Starmie, so that's really nice to be able to do all of that at once. Skarmory was of course great back in Gen 2, but now it's even better. Spike's immunity is more valuable, and Skarmory also has access to spikes itself now, which stack up to 3 layers, making it the premier spike setter in the entire game. Steel Flying is an even better typing here, with more fighting types to worry about, more general physical moves to worry about, and Skarmory can fend off against most of them. Sand immunity is fantastic here. Skarmory feels like it has Magic Guard because it's immune to poison, it's immune to sand, and it's immune to spikes. It just evades everything, chip heals forever. It's kind of an annoying piece of garbage, honestly. It evades justice at every end, and it makes layers which just have such high impact and chip things down and provide value. Also spreads status very effectively with Toxic. It even gets Drill Peck as a way to answer fighting types. You know, you one-hit Heracross and Breloom. Often they try to wall break you with Focus Punch because this set has no attacks on it, so it can get demolished by Focus Punch, but if you happen to be running Drill Peck, that won't work, and you'll just instead KO them, which is not fun for them. Yeah, Skarmory is like the central Pokemon of Gen 3 that everything warps around. That, of course, makes it very targeted. Teams can't function unless they can beat Skarmory in some way. So that's why you see Magneton to trap it, various Pokemon that force it in and chip it down, or just straight up KO the thing, like Choice Band Explosion. Metagross is a good example. And of course, you know, zap those fire types, mix threats like Salamence with Fire Blast, etc. Moltres is very good in Gen 3. It's ranked OU, which is rare. This is usually a Pokemon that suffers in many ways, but in Gen 3 it kind of just hit its stride. It feels really good here. Fire Flying is a great typing in Gen 3, offering burn immunity, fire stab, and flying just carries so hard as I've established. And Moltres is a really great fire-type wall breaker with a good combination of like solid bulk and posing a significant threat. You more commonly run Modest Nature to just get the most out of its damage output, and the great thing about Moltres is that it can come in on a Metagross Meteor Mash, shrug it off well enough, and then threaten to KO them directly. Flamethrower with Modest Nature will just KO Metagross, so they got to get out of there. Moltres also crucially has Will-O-Wisp, which makes it really good against Snorlax. Kind of like back in Gen 1, Snorlax can't really come in at risk of getting burned because it does not have status immunity like Blissey has with Natural Cure or some sort of status counterplay, so Snorlax is really scared of Moltres, especially if Sand is up, especially if Spikes are up, and it's taking so much of its health every time it comes in, and then it gets burned, wearing it down even more, making it useless. Fire Grass is a great coverage combination, hitting Swampert and Water types in general super effectively. Roar is very common too on this, as a way to force damage on Blissey coming in and other special walls coming in with spikes. Another option you can run on this is Overheat, just for big fire type damage. One of the rare high base power moves in Gen 3 that you have access to, and this can get surprise KOs on things like bulky Gengar and finish off low health Blisseys. It has many applications that are useful, and I enjoy using it. Charizard is also ranked OU in Gen 3. This is one of the coolest things about Gen 3 is that Charizard is OU and it feels really good. It's an epic Pokemon. It's kind of like Moltres, but it's faster and it has better mixed attacking options. Most crucially, it has Focus Punch for some sort of fighting coverage. and this can punish incoming Tyranitar switch-ins, or Blissey switch-ins, or Snorlax switch-ins, and it can be made safe with Substitute, because if you have the protection of a Substitute, you can't lose your focus with the Focus Punch. Sub Punch is a common combo in many generations, and that's true in Gen 3 as well. Charizard also has Beat Up, which it can use to pressure Blissey. Beat Up does typeless damage, typeless physical damage based on the attack stat of your whole team, each doing one attack to the enemy, and it ignores all bonus stats, so it ignores EVs and natures, which means it does huge damage to Blissey, who has really low base defense. You can even two-hit, sometimes even just KO Blissey if you get a couple crits in there, and that's really valuable. Obviously, Charizard applies significant pressure to Blissey, and sometimes is pretty difficult to deal with how widely threatening it can be against traditional structures like Skarmory, Tyranitar, Swampert, which gets eaten alive by Charizard sometimes. Zapdos doesn't feel as dominant as it did in Gen 3 because Rest Talk is no longer broken, but Zapdos is still elite in Gen 3 OU here. The Spike immunity feels better, as it does for every flying type. It has Baton Pass to pivot. You can Baton Pass substitutes to teammates. Agility Pass is another option that is great on Zapdos. Mixed Zapdos is good too, taking advantage of the flying typing, actually, with Drill Peck, which is actually pretty nice because Celebi is a common Zapdos switch in, and you can hit Celebi with some surprise, super effective stab damage. Even though your attack is not great, it hits reasonably hard, especially if they're more special wall leaning. Yeah, Zapdos is just a solid special attacker with a decent amount of set variety. I think it's a fantastic Pokemon. I think it's the best offensive Pokemon in Gen 3 in general, just because it's so reliable, so just a combination of like bulky, hard to wear down sometimes because of his Spike immunity, set variety. It can even use Rest and be bulky, and this set can be damn annoying to deal with pressure, stalling the enemy. Yeah, Zapdos is a top tier Pokemon. Gyarados is also ranked OU in Gen 3, which is quite fun, I think, and this is a great alternative to Dragonite Salamence with some different advantages. Gyarados has a water flying typing, which is better against some things than Salamence's dragon flying typing. Gyarados is crucially neutral to ice and resistant to water, making it really good against Swampert, actually. You completely defeat Earthquake, you're immune to Earthquake, you resist Hydro Pump, and you are neutral to Ice Beam and shrug it off well enough, so you can come in on Swampert and use them as a setup opportunity, which is very different to Salamence, who did not want to be in on Swampert ever, as they threaten Ice Beam, which one-hit KOs. Gyarados, on the other hand, can actually 1v1 Swampert, which is very good. Hidden Power Flying from Gyarados hits very hard against a wide array of things. It can also operate as a fighting type check, much like Salamence can, and provides a lot of the same utility to teams. Gyarados also has access to Thunder Wave, which is actually really useful, because sometimes Gyarados will force in enemies like Gengar or Zapdos, because they have electric moves that can threaten Gyarados, and they can often live a +1 Dragon Dance hit and just KO back with electric move, but Thunder Wave will totally destroy them if they come in. It'll paralyze them, which ruins their speed stat, makes them, immobile a lot of the time. So a great way to lure in and punish specific things like that. So probably my favorite way to run Gyarados is with Thunder Wave. It's one of the best advantages it has. What sucks about Gyarados, though, is that it doesn't get Rock Slide, which means that it kind of sucks against sometimes Zapdos, because the best option you have against it is Double Edge. You can Thunder Wave it, which is good, but if you're not running Thunder Wave, you have problems. And especially you suck against Aerodactyl, because what also sucks about Gyarados is its speed is a bit lower than Salamence's, and after a Dragon Dance, if it's running an Adamant nature, it can't outrun Aerodactyl. And even if it does outrun Aerodactyl, you don't have Rock Slide, so you've got to waste Hidden Power on Hidden Power Rock if you want to hit Aerodactyl, which obviously is a big sacrifice. You're losing your stab damage, which sucks. This set can be good though, HP Rock, Taunt, Earthquake, with a Jolly nature to outrun Aerodactyl, because sometimes Aerodactyl comes in thinking that they beat you and you hit them with this by surprise. Yeah, I really like Gyarados in Gen 3. I think it feels great. It's a bit more limited than Salamence, less options. It's more one-dimensional. It pretty much just runs Dragon Dance sweeper sets, but it's a great alternative with some real benefits. And for the most part, Dragonite is just a worse Salamence in Gen 3. Salamence has better stats with higher speed, crucially, and a way better ability in Intimidate. Dragonite's ability in a Focus is useless in Gen 3. But Dragonite does have some unique traits that are sometimes valuable. You got access to Thunder and some other coverage options that Salamence doesn't get, such as Ice Beam and Focus Punch. These are pretty good moves that Salamence does not have access to. Dragonite also has Heal Bell, which is pretty cool. Heal Bell cures your entire team of status, and sometimes this can be really good roll compression. You're kind of like a Salamence that also has this utility on it, and you can also use it to just clear your own status in some matchups, like Starmie Thunderwave or Melodic Toxic are common ways to deal with Salamence, and since you're basically Salamence, you suffer from the same weakness, but with Heal Bell, you can just heal that status and the team status at the same time, and sometimes 1v1 those Pokemon, just Dragon Dancing in their face, because their only attack is Surf. You can heal their Thunderwave or Toxic and just beat them. So Heal Bell's probably the best thing Dragonite has going for it. So that's pretty cool. And there are quite a lot of fringe flying types. In fact, there are many because flying is such a good type. I could talk about all of them, but there's too many to be honest. So I'll talk about some of the cool ones. Articuno is actually good in Gen 3 in my opinion. It has some good defensive advantages. It's great into Swampert, shrugging off Hydro Pump, neutral to Ice Beam, immune to Freeze, and immune to Earthquake of course. Plus you punish them pretty hard with Stab Ice Beam, which is hard hitting. Articuno also has access to Heal Bell, which is great utility, not offered by many things. Articuno has Roar to phase out enemies like Calm Mind, Suicune. Articuno can be great on Superman teams, which are teams that aim to ignore spikes as much as possible by stacking Flying and Levitate Pokemon. Articuno provides utility that other flying types cannot, with, Heal Bell for Cleric support and also support in the Swampert and other offensive water type matchups, which can be rough matchups for teams that stack flying types and levitators. So Articuno, I actually think it's very good in Gen 3. It only fits on specific teams, but it does really well on those teams in my opinion. Swellow is a really interesting one, famously used by the player Vapakuno in a Swellow offense team. It's basically a lead with dynamic branching paths it can go down. You use the Staff Berry, which raises a random stat by 2 when you are at 1/4 of your health or less. And basically the idea is to substitute down to eat the berry and see what you get. And whatever you get, you baton pass to something that can take advantage of it. If you get a defensive boost, you can go to like Suicune. If you get a speed boost, you can go to maybe Suicune or something like Heracross. Attack, you got attackers to take advantage of, and special attack, you have the same. You get the Suicune as well. And if this doesn't work out, if you get a berry boost that isn't that good, you also have Endeavor, which can basically just trade with the enemy and reset the situation. Endeavor will deal damage to the enemy enough to put them at the same HP value that you have, basically. So if you sub down to 1 HP and you Endeavor, they will now be at 1 HP, which basically makes them near death. So that's a good way to just trade with something. You bring something in, deal that last 1 HP, maybe a Tyranitar just takes him out with sand. And you can also just baton pass the substitute to a teammate, like a Heracross or something, and that can be really good. Hidden Power Fighting is also just an attack you can use, which can hit enemy Tyranitar super effectively, Snorlax and Blissey, etc. So I think it's one of the most brilliant teams ever built, this Vapakuno Swellow team, taking advantage of a Pokemon that seems kind of useless in the generation and using it to enable a very unique flavor of offense. It's one of the great teams in my opinion, and Swellow is kind of a nice lead. It's got like a reliable plan in the lead slot, especially because it outruns just about every lead in the game with its enormous 125 speed stat, and this kind of set takes advantage of that speed for like reliable matchups and gaining information and stuff like that. So very cool stuff. Dodrio, I'll give you a shout out even though you're not very good, and I've tried, believe me. Choice Band Dodrio has Baton Pass on it. It's a rare Choice Bander that can pivot, and this can like allow a safe switch into Magneton to eliminate Skarmory, or a safe switch into Tyranitar to eliminate Gengar. You basically lure things in, pivot, and then you can exactly respond with a Trapper that destroys them. So that's cool, and then beyond that, it's fast, it's got good attack, it's got Stab Drill Peck. A lot of stuff doesn't actually get Drill Peck, Stab Return kind of goes crazy as well. You can also just KO Tyranitar in the lead if they are not prepared for it. It's a bit gimmicky, they probably switch out if they know what they're doing, but can get a surprise KO sometimes. An Early Bird is an okay ability, meaning you don't sleep for as long. The other thing you can do with Dodrio is Flail. Flail is a move that gets more power the less HP you have. So the idea is to agility up, to be faster than everything, and substitute down to 1 health to activate your Lychee Berry, granting you an attack boost and activating Flail. And Flail has a massive power when you're at 1 HP. And then Ghost coverage here will cover the Ghost types that are immune to normal. This needs a lot of support to make it work. You got to clear weather so you don't die to Sandstorm when you sub down. You need to eliminate Skarmory with Magneton, and you probably got to eliminate Steel types that resist normal as well. So it's a lot of setup. and you could just use like Salamence or something that's more reliable. But it's epic if it works. It's epic. I've tried it. I'd use it with Ludicolo to clear the weather and spread Leech Seed and stuff. Magneton Ludicolo. I think it's cool at the very least. Jumpluff is actually quite good. It's got flying typing, granting all of those amazing advantages that flying typing of course grants. And it's got sleep. I think it's the fastest sleep user with base 110, same speed stat as Gengar. Very impressive. So you can just lead off with this, outrun just about everything and put him to sleep. Great way to open the game. And then from there you can take advantage of the sleep turn to spread Leech Seed and just chip things down with sub Leech Seed combo. That's always good. And Encore is a damn good move. Encore will force the target to repeat their last move for many turns, and this can destroy stuff like, you know, Suicune clicking Calm Mind, Blissey clicking Recover, all kinds of things. You just force them to use something disadvantageous. Tyranitar could sometimes be forced to just keep clicking Dragon Dance. Sometimes they can outrun you if they're jolly, but most Tyranitars are not jolly, so you can bring in Jumpluff on the turn they Dragon Dance Encore, and you just saved yourself from a Tyranitar sweep. There you go. And earning that free turn from Encore also means, hey, guess what? Sub Leech Seed. I'm going to be annoying again. Jumpluff actually good in my opinion. Actually a good Pokemon in Gen 3. And then there's Mantine, an interesting Pokemon. Introduced in Gen 2, kind of sucked back then. But now it has Water Absorb, which grants water immunity. And this is maybe the best Suicune check in the game, because it's just immune to water, immune to spikes even. And it has Haze, which just gets rid of stat changes. So Suicune can't touch you. You're also neutral to Ice, so Ice Beam won't work against you. And this can help against Swampert as well, but instead of like Articuno, who gets a bit chipped down by Hydro Pump, it's a high power move, it can weigh you down, especially on offensive Swampert. You're just immune to it and you actually get healed by Hydro Pump. So Mantine is kind of similar to Articuno in what it can provide. It's a special wall. It's got a great special defense stat. Being a special wall weak to Electric sucks though, because Electric is such common special coverage, but those matchups into water types are really good, and you can spread Toxic from there and do stuff, so Mantine's okay. It's okay maybe. In Generation 4, Salamence actually became an Ubers level Pokemon, on the level of legendaries. This is largely because of how buffed Dragon type was. Dragon went from a good type to the best type in the game in Gen 4, with the physical special split allowing physically oriented Dragon types to use physical Dragon attacks with stab boost, and just massive power Dragon type attacks being introduced. Outrage being buffed to 120 power, Draco Meteor to 140. Push Dragon types to absurd levels, and Salamence was chief among them here. I mean, back in Gen 3, the best it could do for stab was a 70 power hidden power flying. Now it has Outrage and Life Orb to take advantage of. Life Orb being obviously excellent on this, enhancing its mixed coverage, granting bonus damage to Fire Blast and all of its attacks. And yeah, Salamence is just too overwhelming for OU. It was very dominant. The concept of banning non-legendary Pokemon may have been sparked by Salamence and his brother Garchomp, who were just wreaking havoc in the early Gen 4 OU metagame to an absurd extent. So there you go. Less because of the flying typing, I will say, mostly because of that Dragon type. The flying typing actually a little bit more detrimental here in a world where rocks exist. Shaman Sky is the other flying type Uber, introduced in Gen 4, a legendary Pokemon, an alternate form of Shaman with better offensive stats, high speed, and special attack, and also a flying typing, as opposed to Shaman's base monograss typing. And this is one of the most annoying Ubers of all time. I like its design as a little green dog, however. Serene Grace doubles the chance of secondary effects occurring on moves, and Shaman Sky can abuse this with Air Slash, which is a flying type attack, in fact. Imagine that. With 30% flinch chance buffed to 60%, so the chance to be inactive against this is massive, and this can just weigh you down easily and you can't do anything about it. A little bit of a cheesy strategy. Seed Flare is another thing that Shaman Sky can take advantage of. It has a 40% chance to lower special defense by 2 and a massive power of 120, and this is of course boosted to 80% thanks to Serene Grace. Definitely one of the more infamous Ubers. Usually not a very consistent choice, but it can just absolutely rob you of a victory with the Air Slash flinches. Something you need some sort of preparation. In Gen 4, flying types were of course significantly nerfed by the existence of Stealth Rock now. An entry hazard that would warp the game around itself, the most popular move in the game. It is of course an entry hazard that deals damage based on your rock weakness, and flying is rock weak. Most flying types are going to take 25% incoming from such a hazard, and that is a lot of damage to take simply for the act of switching into the field, especially on many Pokemon that were previously not used to the hazards that were plaguing grounded Pokemon. A bit of a wake-up call for the flying types that, oh, there are perils out there that are out to get me. You know, maybe a bit of a slap in the face. But despite this nerf to the flying type, they still soared above the competition in many ways, and it's still a damn prominent type competitively with many OU ranked flying types in Gen 4 actually. The most significant new one was probably Gliscor, a new ground flying type, an evolved form of Gligar. And ground flying, a great typing considering the new change, not weak to rock. Not being weak to rock is great for you. You take less damage from Stealth Rock. And ground flying is a great type combo, a famous one that tends to do well competitively. Gliscor does not have its iconic poison heal ability quite yet, but it's still good. It's fast, it has taunt, stab earthquake, it has the healing of roost. You can run swords dance on it and be a sweeper if you like. I think it's a good Pokemon, and it's well suited to the metagame with its sand immunity. Stealth Rock resistance, I suppose it doesn't resist rock, but it's neutral to rock, making it less punished by Stealth Rock than other flying types. And spike immunity still comes in handy. There's also toxic spike now in the game, so you're completely immune to those, which comes in handy. Gliscor's pretty good. Aerodactyl is still ranked in OU, and now that Stealth Rock exists, Aerodactyl usually goes to the lead slot to try and do stuff. Because in the lead slot, you're not worried about switching in and taking rock damage, are you? You're just on the field instantly, and you try to get value quickly. Aerodactyl is also a great Stealth Rock user itself. Perhaps the fastest one in the whole game. Very reliable at setting Stealth Rock in the lead slot, and a great offensive lead for aggressive teams that just want to get rocks up as quickly as they can. You also have Taunt to deny the enemy from making rocks. You see how Stealth Rock is warping everything around itself. It's all about making rocks on turn 1. That's all it's about now. You have Focus Sash also to live hits. The issue with this is that it's frail. It's vulnerable to stuff like Metagross, Meteor Mash into Bullet Punch combos, stuff like that. But it's a really good lead, and it's quite reliable. This is an example of how flying type has changed a bit. I mean, Aerodactyl used to be known for its excellence at evading hazards and coming in repeatedly to pose a threat. Now, you can't really do that. It has to lead because flying type is now a detriment for this Pokemon. Bringing Aerodactyl in the mid game is a huge risk because rocks will probably be up and you're just losing a quarter of your health every time you come in. A far cry from how it was back in Gen 3. So Aerodactyl reinventing itself to adapt to the times. Dragonite became much better in Gen 4 as dragon types across the board were buffed with Outrage and the physical special split providing you with many options. Flying typing actually feels like the worst part of Dragonite now, making it rock weak. The Dragonite can coast by on all of its other great advantages. Dragon Dance and Outrage. Its mixed attacking sets, you can go like Life Orb, Draco Meteor, with some physical options as well, like Outrage. Choice Band Dragonite is great, and this Pokemon gets extreme speed as well. One of the best priority moves ever done. Gyarados feels significantly better in Generation 4 now that the physical special split allows it to use water type attacks that are physical. Doesn't get any flying type attacks though, regrettably. Except like Bounce, I think, which is not very good because it's one of those charge attacks. There was a period where they're kind of allergic to giving flying types any good flying type attacks for some reason. I'm not sure why, but Gyarados doesn't really need them anymore as it has other options to take advantage of. And another example where the flying typing actually feels like a little bit of a drawback because Gyarados gets very worn down by Stealth Rock and struggles to switch in repeatedly. Feels very different to how it did in Gen 3 where it was this sturdy, kind of pretty good defensive Pokemon with offensive traits as an added bonus because it would just destroy Swampert. It would be hard to wear down because of its spike immunity. Now Gyarados has to just boost up and go for the throat as soon as it hits the field basically because it's not going to stick around long because of the damn rock weakness. Togekiss is another new flying type that is okay. It's OU by technicality, so it was popular back when Gen 4 was current. In the modern metagame though, not so much. I mean, normal flying has always been kind of a bad type combination. It's not very good to lose your fighting resistance because fighting resistance is one of the best traits of flying type, and losing that is kind of rough. Ghost immunity is a bit better here now that ghost types can more commonly use Shadow Ball and there's more ghost types to speak of, but doesn't help that the most common ghost is Rotom, who just hits you with Thunderbolt super effectively. But Togekiss can actually use its flying typing offensively with the Air Slash special flying type attack, a new option. Post-physical special split. This has a 30% flinch chance on it, pretty broken, and with Serene Grace that gets boosted to a 60% flinch chance. This guy is kind of an annoying piece of garbage. You Thunder Wave them, which introduced disruption and also lowers their speed, and then you just hit them with Air Slash. 60% chance to flinch on top of 25% chance to be immobile from paralysis means the odds of them being able to act are quite low with that combo. You could just hacks people to death as they call it, and Togekiss can really cheese games in a big way. But of course it suffers from its defensive disadvantages, as flying type now has a lot of making up to do from the rock weakness. And there's also Yanmega, another new evolution of Yanma, who kind of came into existence at a poor time. If this was in Gen 3, it would have gone insane. I mean, It's got a pretty nice special attack stat, the ability speed boost, but in Gen 4, Stealth Rock just ruins this thing's life. It's times 4 weak to rock, which is horrendous. You lose 50% of your health switching in. That is just absurd, of course. We all know how broken Stealth Rock is, I don't need to say it, but sometimes you just remember, damn, 50% just for coming in? What were they thinking? But anyway, Yanmega can be a lead though. You lead with it because how else are you ever going to use it? You can't bring this in the mid game. It's dying in moments to Stealth Rock. But in the lead slot, you can take advantage of Speed Boost and Protect to outrun everything, and you got Stab Air Slash, which can be good. You could Stab Bug Buzz, and Hidden Power Ground, I guess, is coverage to hit like Heatran, who would otherwise wall you. That makes sense, and other steel types. It's not great though. Other leads, you know, set hazards and do stuff. You aren't even particularly hard hitting. There's better offensive leads, like, I don't know, Offensive Starmie or something. Just has like Stab Hydro Bump and Bolt Beam. Like, that's just great compared to this. You can outrun just about everything, but can you do anything? I don't know about that. I guess it's alright into like a Zelf lead because you do outrun a Zelf after just one speed boost and threaten them with big bug buzz damage. So that's pretty good. But then think of how many bad lead matchups there are. Like Empoleon, what are you doing against Empoleon? What are you doing against Metagross? What are you doing against Aerodactyl? I don't know about Yanmega, folks, regrettably. Cool Pokemon that came out at a bad time. And I thought I'd shout out Honchkrow too, a very cool Pokemon in my opinion. I like that he has a hat on. It's the evolved form of Murkrow, and it's actually not terrible. It's a dark flying typing, and dark offers a bit more defensive merit. I mean, rock weakness is a lot to overcome, but having insomnia is really nice because you're immune to being put to sleep. This can make Honchkrow a pretty nice Breloom switch in. Breloom is very good in Gen 4 with its Spore set and Poison Heal. So you can come in on Breloom, you're immune to Spore, and then you threaten them with super effective Brave Bird, which just one hits them. And I mean, this is a pretty good offensive move pool. Sucker Punch for priority. Not a very common option, and it comes in handy a lot. It hits Latias. It's like, I don't know, a Zelf. Good neutral damage against, you know, a boosted up Gyarados or Dragonite or something like that. So that's pretty good. And Superpower is also great coverage. High base power here. Hits Tyranitar, hits Blissey, hits all kinds of things, steel types, Heatran, and then Heat Wave hits like Skarmory, who would otherwise, you know, destroy you. It hits the occasional Forretress, Metagross if you want. I think Honchkrow has some potential in Gen 4. I might experiment more with it. I used it on my stream recently as a request, and it kind of carried. It was just one game, of course, but it kind of intrigued me. I'm like, you know what? This guy has some stuff. I might build around Honchkrow in the future. Stay tuned for that. Gen 5 introduced the legendary Genies and their Therian forms, which were excellent competitively. Chief among them is Landorus Genie form, who is uber in every generation it exists in, is probably the most powerful of all of them. Landorus has some great offensive traits, a great attack and special attack stat, 101 speed, just higher than base 100, great for Ubers, where most things are base 100. A lot of legendaries happen to be base 100. And Landorus has access to two very good offensive abilities, Sheer Force and Sand Force. Sand Force grants bonus ground, rock, and steel type damage in the Sandstorm. And in Gen 5 Ubers, you can run sand teams and take advantage of this as a win condition of sorts and an offensive threat. But Sheer Force is also excellent. This is what made it so powerful in OU when it was briefly allowed, and it always gets banned, of course. Sheer Force will boost the power of moves with secondary effects, such as Ice Beam, which has a freeze chance. It gets rid of the secondary effect and instead just gives you a damage boost. Most of the time that's way better than the secondary effect, and Landorus has great options to take advantage of this, like Earth Power for a special attack that gets boosted up significantly by Sheer Force. Sludge Bomb and Sludge Wave are good ones. They get boosted by Sheer Force. And on top of this, you got access to options like U-Turn for pivoting, and even Stealth Rock if you want to just make hazards. This Pokemon has so many tools. It is excellent. Thunderous Genie form is actually banned to Ubers in Generation 5, probably because Permanent Rain makes this an absolute monster with stab boosted Thunder and a high speed stat, high special attack stat. Access to the ability Prankster certainly helps. This grants priority to non-damaging moves, so you got a priority Taunt and a priority Thunder Wave is the more important part. This can be a backup answer to boosted up threats, just paralyze them with priority. Easy to see why this is not appropriate for OU. It's quite powerful. And then there is Tornadus Therian form, who is also banned to Ubers in Gen 5. A rare mono flying type. Mono flying is pretty uncommon. Most flying types are paired with another type. And when I think of a competitive flying type, I think of this thing, because it has an excellent career. Ubers in its debut game, largely because of Hurricane with Stab boosted by the rain, which you can't miss in the rain. I mean, this is very powerful. It has high speed as well, significantly outspeeding most legendaries and most OU Pokemon, of course. A solid enough special attack stat to pose a real threat. And on top of that all, it has the ability Regenerator, which is just one of the best abilities in Pokemon. Healing healing 1/3 of your max HP every time you switch. It's the safest way to heal. And this kind of makes up for the rock weakness, because every time you switch out, you're healing more than rocks deals to you. So this is a rare flying type that can deal with the rock weakness based on this reliable form of healing it has. You got great special coverage on this, and I believe you have access to U-turn as well for pivoting. Indeed you do. What a Pokemon. What a guy. Gen 5 saw the release of a competitive icon, the flying type Pokemon Landorus Therian, who is a staple of competitive singles and doubles ever since its release. Ground flying is an excellent type combination, of course. It has the ability to Intimidate, granting it a bit of bulk as well, lowering the enemy's attack stat and helping you hit the field safer. Its stats are excellent. 145 base attack goes insane, and it just has a great move pool that proves useful in just about every format it's in. Stealth Rock is always great. U-turn for pivoting is the other chief benefit of Landorus Therian. A Stab Earthquake will hit hard no matter who you are, even in this set with no attack investment. You just have so much attack from your base stat that you don't even need it to hit hard. And they commonly use Hidden Power Ice, to be honest, to hit enemy Landorus Therian. That's how good Landorus Therian is. Also hits Gliscor and Dragonite and Garchomp and other things, but Landorus Therian is one of the most important ones to hit. In later generations, Landorus Therian would gain Defog, and Knockoff got buffed as well, another new great tool for Landorus Therian, pushing it to great heights. And in Gen 9, Landorus Therian got nerfed, actually, losing Defog, losing Knockoff, but remaining an OU force, still has value over the competition, and has proved one of the most consistent competitive Pokemon of all time. Flying typing, mostly a defensive benefit for this Pokemon. It's a rare flying type that's not too worried about Stealth Rock because of the complementary ground typing, shrugging off that weakness a little bit more. Sand immunity comes in handy in Gen 5, and immunity to spikes and toxic spikes, and then sticky web, which would come out later. Make it a good defog user because it's not affected by the hazard it's trying to remove, of course, which would be great for it from Gen 6 onwards. And Thunderous Therian is an absolute monster in Generation 5 OU thanks to Permanent Rain, making Thunder perfectly accurate. This is one of the premier rain abusers in the entire format. Its special attack stat is monstrous. It has Substitute to provide free turns for itself against enemies like Ferrothorn and just destroy teams with big damage. It's got Hidden Power Ice for the complementary coverage, of course, the Electric Ice. And Focus Blast is great to hit, Ferrothorn and Tyranitar, who are Pokemon that could perhaps defeat you. Another way you can go with this is Agility. It also gets Nasty Plot. You can sometimes run both and just go all in on boosts with this, often with a Life Orb for more damage. Thunderous Therian would kind of fall off later in the franchise. I mean, Permanent Rain is what makes it so broken here. Volt Absorb, another great trait for it as well, with that electric immunity, but Zapdos would outclass it in the future. But in Gen 5, it reigns supreme. Gliscor is, in my opinion, the best flying type in Generation 5. It gained Poison Heal here, which is just an elite ability in every way. It causes you to be healed by poison instead of taking damage from it, and you heal 1/8 of your HP, which is double what Leftovers offers. Gliscor feels impossible to actually defeat sometimes just because of how good the chip heal is, and its effective status immunity can't be burned because it's already poisoned. And the defensive typing is so excellent alongside this fantastic status immunity and infinite chip heal. It has all the utility in the world. Stealth Rock to create hazards knockoff. I think it's a better Pokemon than Landorus Therian in Gen 5 specifically, just because of how good Poison Heal is. Dragonite received Multi-Scale as a new ability in Gen 5, which pushed it to new heights. If you're at full health, you take halved damage from attacks, thanks to Multi-Scale. It's one of the best abilities in the entire game, and it gives Dragonite free turns to set up Dragon Dance and go crazy with Outrage and all of its other fantastic coverage. This pushed Dragonite above Salamence in the Dragon Flying type power rankings. Dragonite reigned supreme now. A set that I like on Dragonite in this generation is actually Hurricane set. Hurricane has perfect accuracy in the rain and can make Dragonite a pretty good rain Pokemon. And you run Substitute, Roost, and you can actually run Surf as well for damage against, rock types like Tyranitar and other stuff that can thwart Hurricane. It's also boosted by the rain. And you don't have a great special attack stat compared to your attack, but Hurricane is just such a good move. It has 120 power, perfectly accurate, confuse chance too. And with Sub Roost, you can get the most out of Multi-Scale. This really farms Ferrothorn in particular in Gen 5. Ferrothorn can't hit you very hard with Power Whip, which you times for resist, and I think you can EV out of range of Gyro Ball as well, and take advantage of Multi-Scale by roosting back up to full health all the time and just hitting things with Hurricane and Surf. So I used to like this set quite a bit in in Gen 5 OU. Doesn't work that well in later gens though, because there's no permanent rain. Salamence is still good, definitely way worse than Dragonite, but it did get Moxie, which is a unique point in its favor, granting attack raise for every KO. And you just go Choice Scarf on it with Outrage, and you can just snowball. Click the button, KO them. You're faster than them, probably with the Choice Scarf, and then you get attack boost for every KO you gain, turning you into a bit of a monster. Jamming dragon moves is still a good strategy here. There's no fairy types, nothing to worry about. Gen 5 was Gyarados' last generation of OU viability, and I think that's largely due to rain being good for it, because you can boost the power of Waterfall. It still has some good defensive advantages too, and access to Dragon Dance. Actually uses Bounce now for coverage, which is funny. Just lacks much better. And there's also Moxie on it, which is really good. Same ability that Salamence got, which can let it ramp up and snowball. You can even run Choice Scarf Gyarados and just spam Waterfall in the rain and just boost up repeatedly with this. It's quite a good set, in fact. And shout out to Tornadus, who I think is actually pretty cool in Gen 5 OU. It's ranked in UU, but I think it's a viable OU Pokemon as well. It's a mono flying type with some pretty nice offensive stats, a really high speed stat in particular, and it can be used on rain teams with Hurricane for big flying type damage that hits things hard for neutral coverage. Focus Blast is nice complementary coverage to hit Tyranitar, who may try to come in and resist Hurricane and get rid of the rain, creating sand instead. You also get Superpower if you prefer to be accurate, which also hits Tyranitar really hard, and it's physical coverage if you want to hit special walls like Blissey or something. You get U-Turn too, allowing you to pivot. And what I think is cool is Prankster Tailwind. You can't abuse Prankster with much on Tornadus, maybe like Substitute for Priority Substitute, but Priority Tailwind is cool because it grants double speed to your team. This can be used in a pinch to save you from stuff like a Choice Scarf Pokemon or a Dragon Dance boosted Pokemon that's trying to sweep you. With Tailwind, you can also outrun like an enemy Scarf Pokemon in a speed time. Maybe you both have Scarf Latios, but you want yours to be faster, so you Tailwind, and that can be like a win con in some situations. Cool backup option that this can take advantage of, and it can also be clicked on an enemy using Protect or something, just to get an advantage while they're protecting. Gen 6 saw some new flying type Ubers, one of them being Mega Salamence here, among the most powerful Mega forms in the entire game. Mega Salamence has fantastic stats, as you can see, rivaling that of legendaries. 145 base attack is nuts. And it has the ability Aerolate. This ability turns all normal type attacks into flying type attacks and grants bonus damage on top of that. So Double Edge right here turns into a flying type attack with like 144 power or something like that. This is obviously excellent. Mega Salamence previously had no good flying type coverage, but with Aerolate, that is now different. And since you're restricted to one Mega form per team, you would think that this would be uncommon when there's like Mega Legendaries like Mega Mewtwo that you can abuse, but actually Mega Salamence was the most common one I saw in Gen 7 Ubers anyway. I'm not as well versed in Gen 6, but in Gen 7 Ubers, Mega Salamence was everywhere, with a Dragon Dance Roost Refresh set, I think was a common one, and yeah, you got Facade, which got boosted by Aerolate, becomes flying type. It was kind of the go-to Pokemon to spend the Mega Stone on, to be honest, and it was a good one at that, with widely threatening flying stab and other coverage. And there was also Yveltal, the Y-shaped big dark bird from Pokemon Y version. And this is kind of an epic legendary. I'm a fan of it, to be honest. I like this one. It's got the ability Dark Aura, which simply enhances your dark type damage. But Yveltal actually has one of the best flying type attacks ever made. Oblivion Wing, a special attack with 80 power that recovers 75% of the damage dealt. Health draining moves usually recover 50%. 75% is crazy for such a hard-hitting attack too. So Yveltal can make up for the health it loses from Stealth Rock thanks to Oblivion Wing, which heals it up, and it should come as no surprise why this is a good Pokemon. It just has stats, folks. Look at it. Look at the stats. Also has Knockoff, the greatest move in history. All the options you could want. Heat Wave is pretty good coverage. Or Steals. What more to be said, folks? In Generation 6, one of the flagship flying types of the game was Talonflame. You can get Fletchling from just the first route, and it evolves into an elite competitive Pokemon. Fire Flying has its problems, of course, Rock Weakness being the big one, but Gale Wings is one of the best abilities ever made here. Flying type moves have priority increased by 1. You tell me Acrobatics has priority on it, Brave Bird has priority on it, Roost. It's an unbelievable ability, and Talonflame could take great advantage of it. This itemless acrobatics set is a popular set because otherwise you could use Brave Bird, which has recoil on it. Acrobatics with no item has 110 power, which is great with no drawback besides the lack of item, of course. I believe this is a Pokemon that really dominated in the early Gen 6 metagame, and in the modern metagame it's not as popular as it was back in the day, but it's still a very good Pokemon that you have to be wary of. You can't disrespect. Gale Wings regrettably got nerfed. from Gen 7 onwards, only granting priority if you are at full HP, which is obviously far worse, but Talonflame still saw some use with Flame Body sets, and its access to Defog, Roost, and Will-O-Wisp, and even the pivoting move U-Turn, making it a pretty good defensive Pokemon once Boots got released in Generation 8. Tornadus Therian is OU now, no permanent rain to abuse, making it a bit more reasonable, and in Generation 6 it is an excellent Pokemon. Assault Vest is a good choice on it, a new item that grants special defense, at the cost of denying you from using support moves. You can only use damaging moves, but for Tornadus Therian that's no big deal, because you have two great attacks that make progress and forward your game plan. Knockoff, which is buffed in Gen 6 to be one of the best moves in the game, which of course removes an item from the enemy, and U-Turn, which can pivot out. With the Assault Vest and Regenerator, this thing is damn sturdy. It can come in repeatedly, make some progress with Knockoff, pivot with U-Turn to create a safe entry point for a teammate, and if it wants to go on the offensive, you got Hurricane. It's inaccurate, but you can just go for it. You're bulky enough that missing is not a big deal, and Heat Wave is great in a world where Ferrothorn exists and is very threatened by fire type attacks. Mega Charizard Y exists and is a flying type. The counterpart, Mega Charizard X, is actually a fire dragon type, but Mega Charizard Y maintains the same typing as base form Charizard, and it's a great Pokemon. It has the ability Drought, which creates Sun. Sun is no longer permanent, weather effects are no longer permanent as of Gen 6, but making Sun is very good, and a Mega Form that makes Sun and has these stats is pretty desirable. It's good enough offensively to make up for the unfortunate rock weakness, and I mean, having Solar Beam on a Pokemon that just sets Sun by itself is really damn good. Fire Grass coverage is great. And sometimes you can actually run Earthquake, even though you don't have the best attack stat, specifically to hit Heatran, who otherwise destroys you. You can also do Focus Blast for the same thing, but relying on the inaccurate Focus Blast is often a bit dangerous, so Earthquake can offer a bit more consistency, specifically against Heatran. Zapdos exists again. It wasn't OU back in Gen 5. It got outclassed by Thundurus Therian for a time, but now the tables have turned. Zapdos is back to prominence. Zapdos is probably the most consistent competitive Pokemon of all time, always doing well in competitive singles, and part of the reason for this is because it got access to Defog here, a incredible new utility option for it, and the electric flying typing remaining excellent. All the same advantages it always has had. From Gen 7 onwards, it would also gain its hidden ability Static, and that would significantly enhance its defensive value. Static has a 30% chance to inflict paralysis on Pokemon that make contact. Zapdos can spread paralysis just by switching in and taking a hit, which is very good. Hawlucha is in Gen 6. This is something I often forget, actually. I always think Hawlucha is a Gen 7 Pokemon because it was so prominent in that metagame. But no, it came out in Gen 6, a fighting flying type, which is a cool type combo, and has the ability Unburden, which grants double speed on held item loss. It's an excellent ability that can proc with the Citrus Berry here if you substitute down to half health, granting you double speed and turning you into a bit of a win condition. You can Swords Dance up. You have Acrobatics, which has double power if you have no held item, gets boosted if your item is consumed, like this Citrus Berry. You've got High Jump Kick for Stamp. Hawlucha has a really nice typing because it's not rock weak, unlike many other flying types. And it can be a pretty potent offensive Pokemon, folks. And Togekiss is a bit better in Gen 6 as well. It became a fairy flying type instead of a normal flying type, which is way better. Normal flying kind of stinks. Now you actually resist fighting times 4. You have way more defensive advantages from that fairy typing, and that allows you to sit and click Air Slash more effectively than you could in the past. Is it particularly great? No, it's not OU ranked, but it's way better than it was last gen. And probably the gen before, to be honest. I think that you probably could work with Togekiss in Gen 6 OU. It's not too bad. Look at these flying type fellows in Generation 7. Celesteela is an ultra beast that has a flying typing. Steel flying we know is excellent from Skarmory. Here's another one. This one doesn't get hazards or anything crazy like that, but it does get Leech Seed, which is arguably more annoying than such a defensively excellent Pokemon. Also gets options like Heavy Slam and Flamethrower that Skarmory does not. And the ability Beast Boost is always excellent, granting a boost to your highest stat on KO, which is very good. This Pokemon has solid stats across the board, not actually that overtuned compared to some other Ultra Beasts like Kartana, etc., but this is good enough to take advantage of such a powerful typing, and with this move pool, it's a great defensive Pokemon that is very commonly seen in the format. Hawlucha also got way better in Gen 7, it's ranked OU now, because it can take advantage of the terrain with the terrain seeds. With Tapu Koko or Tapu Lele or whoever, you can instantly consume a seed if the terrain is active, which will grant you a stat boost. Electric Seed grants a defense boost, which Not only activates Unburden, it gives you some bulk to be able to set up Swords Dance. It's a perfect storm for Hawlucha, and in this generation it really thrived as a result as a fantastic hyper offense Pokemon, able to outrun everything and defeat things with Swords Dance and Acrobatics and High Jump Kick. And Pelipper exists in OU now. What's up with this? Pelipper in OU? This is one of the most buffed Pokemon in history. A previously nothing Pokemon that you would never use. Now, the best rain setter in OU. They gave it Drizzle, which sets rain on the field. And that is excellent, obviously. Rain is a viable archetype pretty much because Pelipper was added to the game, I think. Well, there's other reasons. Rain abusers are also an important factor, but Pelipper is damn good, and it's way better than Politoed. Partially because of the flying typing, which has so many defensive benefits, and it's got access to Defog as well for some hazard removal. If it has U-turn to pivot, it's got Roost to heal up. You know what else Pelipper has? Hurricane, which it can take advantage of with the rain it sets itself, which is damn good. I used to really love using Choice Specs Pelipper with Stab Hurricane. I think this went insane. I absolutely loved it. What I loved about this is you can switch it straight in to Celesteela, and they can't really touch you, and then you just do huge damage to something with Hydro Pump or Surf, or you just pivot out. I ran this alongside Choice Band Crawdaunt, because with the rain, Crawdaunt could 2-hit Ferrothorn and stupid stuff like that with water moves. A fun combo. And you don't need Damp Rock if you're just using it for Crawdaunt's temporary power boost. So that was a fun synergy I used. But yeah, the more popular set is obviously the defensive Damp Rock set for rain synergy, activating abilities like Swift Swim and turning Ash Greninja into the scariest thing in the world. In Generation 8, the flying type Pokemon Corviknight came into existence, and the world was never the same. This is one of the best competitive Pokemon in recent memory. It's kind of like Skarmory 2, another steel flying type, but with different tools. Most crucially, it just has U-turn, which none of the other ones have. Celesteela and Skarmory, neither of them had U-turn. Something with this defensive typing, and good enough defensive stats to take advantage of the typing with U-turn is extremely powerful. This is an excellent pivot. It can wall all the same things that Skarmory or Celesteela would wall. It has the support of Defog to remove hazards. It even has Body Press to take advantage of its defense stat, and all of that is just excellent, isn't it? Corviknight also likes to equip a Rocky Helmet sometimes, so that it can apply a bit of chip damage, because it doesn't get anything like Toxic or Stealth Rock to make progress. A Rocky Helmet patches that up a little bit for you and makes it more useful. And we've got many flying types ranked in OU in Gen 8, largely because Heavy Duty Boots exist now, which patches up their greatest weakness, that Stealth Rock damage. Think about Zapdos and Tornadius Therian with Heavy Duty Boots, just totally immune to Stealth Rock chip damage. It's enormous for them. As for new flying types present in Gen 8, these are pretty good. The alternate Galarian forms of the legendary bird trio. Moltres Galar is ranked UUBL. It's decently viable. It's got a dark flying typing, a bit like a mini Yveltal, and the ability Berserk, which grants a special attack boost if you're half or less HP. Alongside agility and a weakness policy, you can take a big hit, live, you're down to half health, you get a special attack boost, and you are all of a sudden sweeping the world with Fiery Wrath. This is a great move as well. It's like better Dark Pulse, 90 power, and 20% flinch chance. Just uses Hurricane as a flying stab. Despite the low accuracy, it hits damn hard. And Galarian Zapdos, also UUBL ranked. A cool Pokemon. I'm a fan of this one. It has Defiant, which we're familiar with from Pokemon like Bishop, that grants an attack raise of 2 whenever your stats are lowered. Could be some anti-defog technology, makes it impervious to Intimidate, and other such benefits. And this has a pretty great physical move pool. It's a physical variant of Zapdos with a fighting flying typing, which is a great offensive typing. You're not weak to rock, so you can afford to forego the heavy duty boots for something like a Choice Band here. You're not as threatened by rocks as other things are. And would you look at these moves? Brave Bird, big flying stab, close combat, we love to see it. U-turn to pivot out, thank you very much. Thunderous Kick, Thunderous Applause more like, let's go Zapdos Galar. 100% chance to lower the target's defense. That's every time. Every single time. Well, thank you very much. What an epic Pokemon. I like Zapdos Galar. I think it's very cool. And in Gen 9, the flying type has a healthy existence in Gen 9 OU with many OU ranked Pokemon to its name. And some of the older Pokemon here are looking different now with new tools like Terastallization, some lost tools, and Moltres here is ranked in OU after quite some time. Hasn't been OU since Gen 3. Heavy Duty Boots is a big deal, but that wasn't enough for an OU rank last gen. I think a big part of this is Moltres has a great matchup into Great Tusk, who's one of the most common Pokemon. Generally a pretty nice defensive pivot. Positive matchup into King Gambit as well, with super effective damage against King Gambit. You resist steel, and they don't want to click moves into Flame Body and get burned from contact. So all of that is very good. Plus you got U-turn. Will-O-Wisp is a more scarce option in Gen 9 with status moves being cut on many Pokemon. So access to this is a big deal. Makes you pretty nice versus a wide array of offensive threats. And Moltres is feeling really solid here. It's had a bit of a roller coaster experience in Gen 9. I remember it was ranked OU in the past. Fell down, rose back up again, but here it is, folks. Imagine that. Gliscor has just been a consistently great Pokemon ever since its release. OU in every generation. It was even Ubers for a bit in Gen 9. It came back down. They unbanned it. But hey, Gliscor is thriving in Gen 9. It's absolutely excellent. It has spikes now. They gave it spikes. Why not? Why not buff Gliscor? He needed it. And you can terrestrialize now if you want to just become a water type or some generically good defensive type to just sit there and take advantage of Poison Heal to the greatest extent. Why not do that? Landorus Therian has not fallen despite some attempts to tarnish his legacy. Landorus Therian remains ranked in OU despite competition. It has serious competition from Great Tusk, Gliscor, Iron Treads. There's a lot of bulky ground types. There's even Gliscor is pretty hard to beat in Gen 9, but Landorus Therian holding strong. Intimidate still has its value. U-turn and the offensive power and speed of Landorus Therian sets it apart from Gliscor. The flying typing means it matches up well into Great Tusk, so long as they don't have Ice Spinner. And Earth Power is a good adaptation. It hits King Gambit harder. They got high defense. It hits Great Tusk harder. You got U-turn. You got Taunt as well. Taunt disruptive, denying them from making hazards or boosting up or whatever they want to do. So Landorus Therian holding on to high usage in Gen 9 against the odds. Skarmory still ranked in OU. What a consistent competitive Pokemon. It's got Body Press Iron Defense combo now. Unlike Corviknight, this guy can create spikes on the field. He actually does not have Defog anymore. I mean, nothing has Defog anymore is crazy. The amount of Pokemon they cut Defog from is kind of criminal, to be honest. We need more Defoggers. But you can just run Corviknight if you need that. And if you want hazards, you run Skarmory. It also has Sturdy, which Corviknight does not have, so it can live a hit from full. I think Pressure probably better overall, but Sturdy comes in handy, of course. Enamorus exists. This is another genie introduced in Pokemon Legends Arceus, and it's pretty damn good. It's Fairy Flying, a great type combination. It has the ability Contrary, an excellent ability. Inverting stat stage changes, so instead of lowering stats or having stats lowered, you will gain stats. Superpower is a good way to take advantage of this, but an even better way, since the addition of the Stellar type, is with Terra Blast Stellar. A Stellar Terra Blast actually lowers your attack and special attack when used, but with Contrary, that will buff your attack and special attack instead, and Stellar type moves are just neutral against everything. They are super effective against enemies that have terrestrialized, but that's it. So a pretty nice way to spend your terrestrialized to just get that neutrally good attack that ramps up constantly and even punishes enemy defensive terrors. That's quite a thing, isn't it? And last but definitely not least is Iron Jugulus, a beloved Pokemon that is kind of the face of Gen 9 if we're being honest. I mean, they keep pushing mascots like Ogerpon and Mousehold and those funny little guys, but Iron Jugulus is the mascot in the heart of the people. It's a beloved Pokemon everywhere you look, and the flying typing is... It's great in-game with Stab Hurricane at its disposal. It's good on rain teams. And you know what's better about it is that it's just sort of a cut above everything else. Flying above the competition. Soaring to heights that we've never seen before in terms of Pokemon success. I mean, there's been whispers from certain people in the industry that we might see Iron Jugulus in Smash Bros. In the next DLC, and perhaps even in Fortnite. We'll have to wait and see if that comes to pass. And that does it, folks, for my flying type recap and the entire series of type videos in competitive Pokemon. I've done them all now. I've done every single type. Who's your favorite flying type in the series? Mine is Dodrio. And what is your favorite type in the whole game? Mine is fire type. Let me know down below in the comments, folks. And thank you for watching this series.